1956, I got a letter from John Painter, who was organizing what was then called the All-American Bandmasters Band. It was a wonderful group of applied faculty from colleges around the country, some professional people, some high school people, all fine musicians, and it was a wonderful band. It was that one, and John was organizing it, and his staff ran it. And when I arrived, I was moved into the YMCA, which was across the street from the Hilton at, Wabash and 9th Street or whatever it is. And I was carrying my tuba on the bus then to the north side of the Loop to Lake Street to go to the Sherman House. And when I got there, John said, "Don't do that. Work with the boys on the staff, moving chairs and stands and drums, and stay with me." So I did that, and did that for 3 or 4 years while that band was in existence. And then, and that week, I stayed with John, but didn't sleep. He snored all week, but anyhow, and we were paid. Our pay was free room, a free bed, if you could sleep, and we would get meals if we ran down Don Lyons of the Lyons Band Instrument Company, who would take us to lunch or something. Otherwise, we bought our own meals. Then, when that, after about 4 years of doing that, Don Lyons asked me to serve as host to the groups that were coming in as they arrived in the hotel, which I did for 20 or 30 years. And I would meet them as they came into the hotel. And rarely did they fly in, but if they did, I would drive out to O'Hare and pick up the band director to bring him to the hotel to get him checked in. Or I'd go to the train station, or most of them arrived by bus at that time, and just kind of take care of them in the hotel. I did that for many years, and then ultimately was asked to be on the board, I don't know when, sometime along the way, about halfway along in those 60 years. So it's been a wonderful experience all the way along, and to be associated with the Midwest and the geniuses who were on the board, smart, wonderful people. I began as a tuba player in the Army Band, and I planned to stay there. I was the youngest member of a six-member. There were 6 tuba players, and I was the youngest. All 5 had been in World War II. This was 1952 when I went there, and all the other 5 had been in World War II. 4 of them had been in the Army Band in World War II, and had been overseas, and the 5th had been overseas, but in a different band, and then joined the Army Band later. So I did all the work that no one else wanted to do. There were old men in their 30s, and I was 22, so anybody over 30, was very old. And some were 40 even. I mean, what an ancient age. And I was planning to stay because the principal was going to retire about the time my enlistment was set to be up. And then his daughter enrolled in university and had to go through a physical exam and found that she had tuberculosis, and he decided he couldn't retire, take a cut in pay. And so it meant at least 10 years before anybody would retire, and I figured, well, I decided to go into education. And so then I got a job in a wonderful liberal arts college in Indiana, Manchester College, and then I got the most important job I ever had was as a high school band director then for several years. Ultimately, I was academic vice president of the system of state college universities in Louisiana, and interim president for a couple of years. But before that, I had gone to my alma mater, my bachelor's degree alma mater, Southeastern Louisiana, as department head, and then executive assistant to the president and academic assistant vice president. And the president then brought me to the system office when he moved there. And but of all those jobs, I consider the most important, the most significant one was as a high school band director. That's where you really deal with education personally, and those are the contacts that are so important. So yes, it was a broad career, and I continued to play, but not nearly as well as I should have throughout all the time, jobbing occasionally. And then when we, at the University of Southeastern Louisiana University, we had a brass quintet that was just wonderful. So that was good playing for a while. But I think I would just say, everybody who thinks that the path to glory is to get a doctorate and get a college teaching job is not nearly as important as teaching high school. And there are a lot of college bands that don't play as well as good high school bands. Well, before I went to the Army Band, my bachelor's degree was in Bachelor of Music Education. My master's was a Master in Performance, tuba performance at Northwestern. So I felt comfortable going into education, teaching, although I remember one of the most important parts of preparation was I found that I was going to be the only wind and percussion teacher at this wonderful liberal arts college, and so I would have to teach the methods courses, including percussion. And I had had a semester of percussion in college, but felt completely incompetent. And so one of the Army Band guys took me under his wing, and within 6 weeks or so in preparation, and I learned a lot about percussion by doing that, and that was so important. And then having to review the instruments as a teacher, a methods teacher, I felt, I learned more than the students did, which is always the case, no matter what you're teaching, how well you're prepared. So as far as that kind of preparation, yes, I'd had the fortunate experience of having played under a fine high school band director in a very small, disadvantaged situation, but he knew what he was doing. And then in college, the person who became my lifetime mentor was the band director and my tuba teacher. He was a horn player, but had studied with Max Podeg, the great horn teacher. And so when I went to Northwestern, I decided I was going to do the Strauss E-flat horn concerto, which is the best tuba piece ever written. And I was playing it, and Max Podeg heard me practicing. And he came in and says, "Who are you?" And I said, "Oh," he said, "You studied with Jimmy Wilcox." I said, "Yes." He said, "You come learn Strauss with me." So